Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Gary, are there any public speakers this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have 7 public speakers, starting with Mr. Kuppenberg.
Okay, go ahead.
You're in charge of it. You and Norman, that's it. The resolution governs the board members.
I don't know if it's been handed out.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you this morning?
Good, thanks.
There you go.
He doesn't know what he's asking.
OP stands for Operations Planning. Planners are free thinkers. They ask as to why service is bad and use creative and innovative steps and discourse to fix it. Former TA President Lawrence Reuter unfortunately thought planners were staff. They must be cold, insensitive, propaganda-spewing robots. And the senior VP of OP, the henchman. For example, the proof is in the pudding. The Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, who serves Philadelphia and environs within Pennsylvania, has 1/4 the patronage per capita as the TA, MTA bus, and Long Island bus combined. But since 2005, their OP had 4 times more non-schedule adjustment output than our OP. You can force Mr. Roberts, as the new TA president, to finally foster internal and external discourse by having OP prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, all weekend subway geos based on winter 2008-9 non-geo schedules cannot be more frequent than every 2 2/3 minutes on each and every revenue track. And that each and every geo subway schedule be released to the general public effective yesterday. And each and every service cut in the 2009 rationalization program cannot be fixed comprehensively with the comparative evaluation and community benefit analysis. If you cannot nor will not force the TA to do all of the above, then you should step aside for those who will. If you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem, plain and simple. There's a clause in the contract the TA has with the City of New York that the base fare of Accessori must be no higher than the TA's local bus, subway, and subway base fare. Probably why you propose a $2.50 fare. And for the disciplinary change, their version is, the TA's proposal is cancellation due to weather, my foot. Each and every time before the TWU and ATU contracts expire, the MTA, especially the TA, cries poor. I will never believe this. Not one iota. All that who claim otherwise is a storyteller. No paratransit disciplinary changes, no fare increase, no service cuts, no staff cuts, and open all of the books. If you cannot nor will not do all the above, then step aside for those who will. If you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Plain and simple. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Ms. Kate Sleven.
Good morning. My name is Kate Slevin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, a regional policy watchdog organization working for a more balanced transportation network. We have one message today, and that is Albany must act. It is 2 days and counting until fare hikes and service cuts are a done deal. 2 days until riders on dozens of bus lines across the region lose service, until monthly unlimited Metro North tickets from White Plains to Grand Central rise from $191 to $243, until monthly unlimited Metro cards increase from 81 to 103, until Long Island bus riders lose free transfers to New York City subways and buses and face fares of $3.50 per ride. If Albany doesn't act, we begin the vicious cycle of transit disinvestment, where fares increase, service declines, and our economy suffers, and safety and reliability are undermined for future generations. Albany, do not let this happen. We need leadership from Senate Majority Leader Malcolm Smith, Governor David Patterson, and Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver. We need them to find a way to plug holes in the operating budget and invest in the next multi-year capital construction program. A balanced operating budget and multi-year capital program are like love and marriage, and as Sinatra sang, you can't have one without the other. Last week, the Daily News called the broad coalition urging more MTA funding remarkable. That's because it includes so many diverse groups, from powerful teacher unions to business groups to construction trades to good government groups to local environmental justice organizations to regular commuters. Senate Majority Leader Governor Patterson and Speaker Silver, if you don't agree on a compromise, fares will rise and our transit system will start to fall into disrepair under your watch. Transit riders and future generations will remember who is to blame. Please do something.
Thank you, Ms. Slavin. Our next public speaker is Kevin Corbett.
Thank you. Good morning. After so many commission hearings and board meetings, I think by now you know my name is Kevin Corbett, and I am co-chair of Empire State Transportation Alliance, a coalition of business, civic, labor organizations that seek to build consensus for resources for New York State's transportation. I'm here today with many of my colleagues who call on the state legislature and the governor to act without delay on a transit finance package to stave off major fare increases and cuts and keep the system running for the long term. The riding public deserves assurances that our political leaders will not starve the system back to the days where service cuts, breakdowns, and delays undermine commerce and the future of the city itself. Claims that the MTA is inefficient, unaccountable, or not transparent is not an acceptable excuse. Can the MTA do better? Sure. But the reality is we have the world's largest transit system that, by and large, runs effectively and moving millions of people every day. It is the lifeblood of commerce and irreplaceable network that facilitates education and civic life. If the legislature feels strongly, this is the perfect time to ask for reforms along with a responsible piece of legislation. The Ravitch Commission has worked hard and openly to come up with a program that ensures the survival and updating of the system in a manner that distributes the impacts of the burden fairly. Tough choices have to be made, and ESTA strongly maintains support for a plan that shares the burden amongst drivers, businesses, and transit riders as the most equitable option and commits to a stable, long-term source of funding. Throwing a few Band-Aids at the problem now and suggesting addressing the bigger problem of the capital program in an election year when budgets will probably, if not certainly, be worse is neither credible nor responsible. That puts the capital program and all its progress to date at risk and could mean projects along with jobs and the economic stimulus they provide could come to a standstill. The time for political maneuvering is over. New Yorkers deserve better. Leaders in Albany must answer this call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Our next speaker is Mr. Gene Roshnoff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members and staff. My name is Gene Rushinoff. I'm with the Strap Hangers campaign. So it's crunch time for the transit system, and we, the Strap Hangers campaign, are very worried that it'll be the riders that get crunched and crammed. Because if in the next 2 days Albany does not approve a package of aid for the MTA, then you will vote a whopping fare hike and massive service cuts. The fare hikes are ugly. $2 to $2.50 for the base fare, $103 for a 30-day pass over the $81 that it is now. And on the service side, you'd be eliminating or shortening 5 subway lines, 20 bus routes, and scores of station agents. And after 25 years, there will be a halt in the progress to your critical rebuilding program, thrown into an uncertain future. Now, for us, they're all fare, service, and the capital program are all interconnected. Fares are how much you pay. Service is what you get for what you pay. And the capital program is whether you're riding on a 40-year-old crummy subway car that breaks down all the time or at the mercy of 80-year-old signals. So who can rescue riders from having to pay a whole lot more for a whole lot less? I'd start with the state Senate and its Majority Leader Malcolm Smith. They proposed a plan. I don't think it adds up. And it doesn't address your fundamental rebuilding needs. And if he doesn't quickly come to the rescue, his own district will suffer cuts to 14 bus routes, and the E and the F will be made more crowded, which is sort of incomprehensible that that would be the case. Similar cuts would hit riders in the districts of his colleagues. At the same time, I have to say, riders are looking to Governor David Patterson's leadership to find ways to address our transit crisis, working with the state's legislative leaders. In the end, it is his responsibility to win a plan that makes for safe, decent, and affordable transit. And lastly, I would say, looking over your tariff change document, it appears that at least for the moment, you're not going to raise paratransit to $5 a trip, which would have been unconscionable. And I hope it represents the policy of this agency not to raise it more than what you do to the regular base fare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rushnoff. Our next speaker is Mr. Neil Jacoby.
Hello, thank you. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Environmental Defense Fund, and I just want to read a quick statement. Our transit system is the lifeblood of our region and the force that keeps our people mobile, our economy strong, and our air clean. The system is in financial trouble, and decisions need to be made now to secure its health and vitality for the millions of people who rely on it every day. This defining moment has called for heroes to defend our transit system, and thankfully there have been many. There were hundreds and thousands of riders and commuters who have signed postcards, written letters, signed petitions, and phoned their elected officials urging them to make the tough decision to keep our transit system safe and reliable. And specifically, in contrast to what was reported in this morning's New York Times, many of them, almost all of them, were bridge toll supporters. I can attest to that personally. Richard Ravitch and his commission are heroes for proposing a fair and balanced long-term plan to fund the system by asking all those who benefit, the riders, businesses, motorists, to contribute to its well-being. And now it's Albany's and our state government's opportunity to be heroic. The governor appointed the Ravitch Commission and championed the Ravitch Plan. He's a transit hero because of his willingness to support some unpopular but necessary solutions. Speaker Silver is a hero because he supports the basics of the Ravitch Plan and recommended some adjustments to make it more acceptable to more legislators. And now we wait for the Senate. And where are they? Their response has been a plan that is short-term and ill-conceived and puts off for tomorrow what must be done today. So we call on Majority Leader Smith to join the parade of heroes and make the hard choices and support a transit rescue plan that supports holding fares in check and continuing to rebuild the system for a better tomorrow. And now we look to the governor to bring all parties together and find a solution to this crisis now before it's too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jacoby. Our next public speaker is Mr. Bill Henderson.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Henderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. Well, what we've seen today in terms of the material in the proposed tariff amendment book that we got this morning are increases that will result in real pain to the riders. But we have to realize that's only a part of the pain and maybe even the least severe part of the pain. The service cuts that are coming down the pike are really going to affect people and will result in some people not being able to get to work, some people not being able to visit their families, some people not being able to get to school or to medical care. We've become a bit numb to the numbers. $103 for the MetroCard 30-day pass, $250 for a subway ride. Some of the numbers do take your breath away, though. $216 for a monthly Metro North pass to Mount Vernon. $452 for a maximum monthly ride on the Long Island Railroad, and the cost for somebody who commutes using both Long Island Bus and Transit could go from $81 to about $240 a month. We're disappointed to see these increases, but mainly we're disappointed in our elected officials, particularly the Senate. We had a good process with the Ravitch Commission where respected experts weighed the options and crafted a reasonable plan, but we got off track. This plan laid a firm foundation for not only getting through the current budget crisis, but for the future. There's still time to bring the process to a successful conclusion, but our legislators have to get going and get serious. We call upon our elected officials to take MTA funding seriously and enact stable, reliable, and inflation-sensitive operating and capital funding for the MTA, more importantly for its customers. We can't afford anything less. Thank you.
And our last public speaker is Ms. Felice Farber.
Good afternoon. I'm Felice Farber with the General Contractors Association of New York. Without a new and sustainable revenue stream, transit and commuter rail riders will face a whopping 23% fare increase, service cuts on 13 bus routes in the Bronx, 16 routes in Queens, 30 routes in Brooklyn, 8 routes in Staten Island, and 33 bus routes in Manhattan, and the elimination of 2 subway lines. The impact on transit riders and suburban commuters will be quick, obvious, and severe. What will be less obvious is the devastating hit the lack of funding will have on the MTA's capital program. Without a funding plan that addresses both the operating and capital needs, we will see the kind of disinvestments that led to the conditions of the 1970s and early 80s, or excessive debt that led to the current operating crisis we now face. MTA riders, both transit and commuter rail, will be riding in older, less reliable rail cars and buses, waiting at stations in need of rehabilitation, and depending on signal systems that are 70 to 80 years old. The state Senate needs to act on a fair and reasonable financial plan immediately, one that shares the burden of supporting the transit system among all who benefit. Let's stop throwing up a smokescreen, show true leadership, and act for the benefit of all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farber. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public speakers.
Okay, next order of business is the approval of minutes of our February 23rd Finance Committee meeting. And may I please have a motion?
Motion made.
And a second, please? And a vote, please. Okay, the minutes are approved. Gary, would you take us through the work plan, please?
There are no changes to the work plan. There is one item added to this month's agenda, and that is the resolution from Ms. Lubitz.
Let me just mention that this is Sharon's last Finance Committee. Sharon, obviously, as you all know, has been not only an integral member of our budget and finance team at headquarters for a very long time, 25 years with MTA, 32 years in public service, but also an integral member of the operation of this committee. And so I want to add, I guess first, my voice to say how much we appreciate all that Sharon has done for us. And you have in front of you a resolution that I think Lee is going to highlight. So with that, Lee.
Okay. So whereas Sharon Lubitz, whose institutional knowledge attained over a career span of 32 years, beginning with the Office of the New York State Comptroller and the New York City Comptroller's Office, followed by 25 years with the MTA, where she honed her skills and ascended to the MTA Budget Directorship in 2001, will retire on March 25, 2009. And whereas Sharon Lubitz earned the respect of her colleagues as she led the development of financial plans and policies that contributed to the financial stability and credibility of the MTA, and whereas Sharon Lubitz's leadership increased internal efficiencies and improved the budget reporting of the authority and its constituent agencies such that the integrity of the consolidated financial information provided was of the highest possible quality and the fiscal realities better understood. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors Committee on Finance takes great pleasure in recognizing the significant contributions of Sharon Lubitz and herewith expresses its sincere gratitude for the invaluable services she provided to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and its constituent agencies. Congratulations, Sharon.
Sharon, I might just add, I'm going to personally miss you, and I think two thoughts. One, I think you're very young to be retiring, and number two, Sharon, this is a heck of a time to leave. So with that said...
And you need to move the resolution.
Okay, and formally, may we please have a motion? And a second, please.
Second.
And a vote, please. You can vote, okay? We give you permission. All right. Go ahead, Sharon. Now the report after the accolades.
Well,
and please tell us why you picked today to leave.
Well, I'm going to be officially turning over the reins to Doug Johnson, who stepped in for me last month. But I would like to express my thanks to the committee and of course, the wonderful staff of MTA Headquarters Budget Department who, you know, without them, I would have no words to speak to this committee. And they work very hard, and they will continue to be working hard for this committee, and they deserve equal recognition for that. And it saddens me because when I planned this out, I had thought that today would be, a very different kind of resolution in terms of our budget. And it saddens me that has not yet been resolved, and I hope that that things will turn around for the good in the future. So thank you very much.
That's very nice.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Lovely. Very nice.
Doug Johnson will deliver Budget Watch.
Thanks.
Wait, did Sharon's knock it the last time? No?
It's Doug's now.
Would you like to?
All right.
I have some big shoes to fill, but I'll try my best. I'm going to talk about February flash results. February passenger revenues were slightly worse than budget. New York City Transit was on target as higher bus revenues were offset by lower subway revenue. Commuter rail revenues were 2.4% lower than the budget, also due to lower ridership. Toll revenue was slightly below target. Moving to expenses, February expenses were $20 million favorable, or 3%, and that was due primarily to lower costs for fuel, maintenance contracts, and materials. With only 2 months past, though, it's likely that some of that variance is probably due to timing. Debt service costs were $3.7 million favorable, or 3.1% favorable due to lower rates and timing. Again, the big story here is real estate taxes, which in March dropped even further than the poor results we've been showing in recent months. Total real estate receipts were $48 million, or 66% below budget for the month. On a year-to-date basis, they were $123 million, or 56% below budget. Particularly hit hard are New York City urban tax receipts, which were 76% below budget for the month. That's all I have on Budget Watch.
Unbelievable.
Next item on the agenda is our Finance Watch, which will be given by Mr. McCoy.
There's a Finance Watch in your committee book on page 13. It's a rather brief Finance Watch summarizing our dedicated tax fund borrowing fiscal 2009 Series A $255 million bond issue. This transaction proceeds will be used for transit and existing transit and commuter capital projects. Just a quick summary on the deal. The all-in true interest cost was 5.548%, which compares favorable to our budget of 5.88%. Average life is 19.7 years, and the bonds were structured as level debt service, with the final maturity being November 15th, 2039. The total impact on debt service is $17.7 million per year for the life of the bonds. Unless there's any questions, that concludes Finance Watch.
Is there any questions for anybody? Okay. Then the next item is, Gary, will you take us through the finance agenda?
Sure. Let me start with a few things. One, just a very brief update. We've continued in discussions with our Albany funding partners, particularly our colleagues in the state Senate over the last few days. We met with them on Friday and continue discussions through the weekend. And although the discussions have been constructive, talking is always constructive, and they have been constructive, there's no progress to report at this point. So there's not a lot to say about that. There is more to say, though, about the numbers that Doug talked about, and I want to talk about those for a second. First, as you heard, Doug talked about how ridership versus budget, and this is revenues versus budget, was off about 1% from what we were showing for 2009 on a year-to-date basis. It's worth remembering, right, that first of all, remember that February is it's always an unusual month because of weather, but it's also unusual because in 2008 was a leap year, and so there was an extra year in an extra day in 2008, but there was actually one less work day, so it's a little hard to compare apples to apples. But if you do look January and February, year-to-date 2008 versus 2009, the numbers are sobering, as we know, because we've been talking about them. B&T traffic is down 6%. Metro North's ridership is down 5.5%. Long Island's ridership is down 8%, and Subway's is down about 4%. So although...
So this is actual, not budget that you're
Right.
talking about. Does everybody understand that?
Yes. So as against the budget, we are holding up relatively well. We've talked about sensitivity because, again, we are perceiving this as being an accelerating decline. And so we have to watch this information very carefully. We have talked about it here, Mr. Chairman, a few times, but it's important to sometimes take a step back from what the budget is and look at how we're actually comparing to a year earlier. In that same vein, let me just also mention, just put a point on Doug's comments on the real estate proceeds. So as of right now, real estate as against the budget is off $120 some million just for the first 3 months, the first quarter of this year, which is a big amount, 56% off of the budget forecast. But remember something, and that is that it's off 70% off of last year. And this year's forecast, the one that we're off 56%, was forecast to be down $700 million from the 2007 total receipts. So what we're seeing in real estate proceeds is, we had taken it down. Every opportunity there was to take the forecast down, we took it down. But we are dramatically underperforming even that forecast. In the same vein, we saw some softness in the petroleum business tax this month. We don't know whether that was timing or not, because that tax had been holding up in the first couple of months of this year. So we need to watch that more carefully. And as we know, our MTOA numbers, because of the way that the money comes from Albany on an appropriation, and we receive no proceeds in January, February, and March of the year until after the state adopts its budget, we don't know how those numbers are going to hold up. We do know, as we mentioned last month, that the consensus forecast reduced all state tax proceeds by $1 billion, a portion of which we would see a hit here. As they continue in Albany to negotiate the outlines of a budget agreement, it's likely that we'll see impact there. So what does that all mean as you sort of put all that information together and you think about the tenuous situation that we're confronted with? I think it's easy to be caught up because it is so dramatic with the actions that you are confronted with in terms of fair and service actions. But it's important to remember a couple of things. Even with that budget, we were balanced at a very tight level. Only $40-some million cash balance was forecast for the year, with a $75 million, our usual $75 million general reserve. The information that we've just talked about, how we are just through the first quarter of this year, is, as we've said before, quite sobering. And I think it means a couple of things. It means not only do we have to focus on what's in front of us in this immediate time period, but also it puts even more focus on the working group that the chairman created to search for additional means of reducing the expense side of our budget. That group has been meeting intensively over the last several months. And at the chairman's request, we've accelerated it so it now meets weekly. And the effort is going to be to report back to Finance in April with additional ideas that, again, are under serious consideration. And they are fairly structural type elements that have been discussed. And so it's, we talk about this many times about how the MTA budget is, sort of not only is it vast and complex, but it is very dynamic. We tend to think of it as a static thing. We propose it in November, we adopt it in December, we revise it in July. But it isn't always like that. And when we see as many forces in terms of the general economy at work as we do right now, it may well be that we will not wait until July to review the budget. So that said, and that focus on what we have in front of us after we get through what's immediately in front of us is a way to say that I think that even after we get through this, when we come back and talk in April, we'll be talking about more difficult actions that will confront us. We have an obligation to maintain the system, and you all have expressed your commitment to accomplishing that, and that commitment, I'm sure, will be challenged as we go forward. We're in moving to
I think before we leave that, I think it's very important that what we get challenged on so often is the fact that our finances are not transparent. And every time there seems to be a problem in the legislature or somebody in the press wants to criticize us, it's about our finance. And I think the board feels, and if anybody wants to contradict me, this is the time, that we have an extraordinarily visible finance system. If we could figure out a way to make it more transparent and more understandable, we would do it. The problem is, as Gary points out, it is dynamic. It's not static, and the changes that we have to make during the course of the year sometimes make it look like we're pulling a fast one. We're not. And why we're going over this over and over and over again is so the public understands there's no song and dance going on here. We are aware of what's going on. If somebody could point out a way we could express it better, if we could show our numbers better, we would do it. We have to get away from the notion that the MTA keeps two sets of books and we're doing something that's underhand. We are not, and this board sits here every month trying to make sure we understand it and the public understands it, and what Gary has gone over is truly happening. So if anybody doesn't understand it around the board, we're willing to have more meetings so that everybody understands the position the MTA is in financially, and there's nothing hidden. There are no two sets of books. It's very clear, and it's as simple as you can make an organization as big and as complex as we are. Simple, and it ain't easy, that's for sure. And I think Gary and his staff do a great job trying to explain it to us, to all of us on the board and to the public.
So moving into the agenda, let me just bring your attention to the book you didn't want to see, which is, of course, the 2009 Fare and Toll Increase book. You're going to have three specific action items. I'll tee them up for your discussion. The first, which is in your book on page 1, is the staff summary and attached resolution dealing with the subway bus, MetroCard, Long Island bus, MTA bus, and commuter railroad fare and tariff changes. The staff summary resolution and the annotated tariff changes that are after it reflect the staff's recommendation to you to meet the 23% yield that is part of the adopted budget that you adopted in December. In the case of MetroCard, it is what we described as option 1 in the briefings and what was presented to the public and on the web. It is the set of increases that most evenly applies the amount necessary across each of the various fare media. There was some discussion in some of the briefings about the $3 cash fare and whether or not the $3 cash fare can be moved into option 1, which of course the board can make any changes, obviously, that it wishes. Just in terms of that particular item, as we said, it's a relatively small financial piece. It's estimated at about $25 million or so, and the effort really was driven or aimed at reducing boarding time on buses by making a greater financial inducement to utilize MetroCard rather than coins on buses. In any event, staff does not recommend going forward with it at this point because it does differ, and the amount of money that it generates is relatively modest, and so that's why that change, the option A, is simply the option A that was presented to you earlier. Let me just mention a couple of things. One is that, as you've heard, we are not advancing right now the tariff change, the specific tariff change dealing with Access-a-Ride, while discussions continue on the legal agreement between New York City and MTA that would ultimately, by its terms, at least require submission to the FTA. Those discussions are ongoing. In the meantime, the city is working with MTA to see whether or not there are additional actions that we can take in addition to those that we've already proposed within the Access-a-Ride program to reduce the expenses so that the amount of growth is closer to what it is that was forecast in the budget that you adopted. For your information, that number was $18 million in 09 and 36 in calendar year 10. Also, just in terms of highlighting the fares on Long Island bus are the most difficult of all, and require the highest rate of increases, and that's as a result, as we all know, of the loss or the failure of the Nassau County to pay the operating deficit, and as a result, the tariff for Long Island Bus has a base fare increase higher than MetroCard, and also proposes to eliminate the utilization of unlimited passes on the Long Island Bus system. On the two commuter railroads, the fares are proposed, again, as you've seen in the past, so that each of the various fare types, in the case of the railroads, pay as close as possible to the same amount, so that the relative increases are similar, so that the total yield hits the target of 23%. The details of each of these have been provided to you in the past, and they are in your book. So you actually have the fare tables as well as the specific tariff changes for each of the items. So the first action item that you have in front of you then is a resolution for those tariff changes.
Gary, are you finished then? Is that your report?
That's the first one, yes.
Oh, so you want to do what I thought we might do is, why don't you go through them all, and then I can make the formal presentation, and I would open up the floor to discussion to
Okay, there are
the
two
members
other
of the committee.
sure, there are two other action items that are in the book that you need to focus on. The next is in your book on page 59. Again, recognizing the statutory distinction in the public authorities law between Triborough and MTA. The first piece, before you can get to the increase in crossing charges, is on page 59 is a staff summary and a resolution dealing with your acceptance of the environmental analysis that was performed and a negative declaration that flows from it, as well as a report on that the increases are just and reasonable in the event that such a determination were actually necessary. So this is an abundance of caution. So that's the staff summary, which is separate and independent from the actual crossing charges. The crossing charges on Triborough are a separate resolution, which is contained or begins on page 113 of your book. The crossing charges for Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, as you know, increase both Easy Pass and cash. On the major facilities, cash goes from $5 to $6.50, and double for Verrazano, which has one-way crossing charges, less for the minor facilities. Easy Pass is increased proportionally, and there is a change in that the non-New York Easy Pass Service Center users, the crossing charges proposes would pay cash rather than the Easy Pass discount. So that's the quick summary. Obviously, the staff summary and the resolutions have more detail, as do the attached tables to each of the proposed actions.
Third.
That's the third.
Okay, what I would like to do then is read the formal resolutions, please, and before we have the vote, then we will open up the committee to discussion, and then we can go back and vote on each one of the three resolutions. Today, the Finance Committee must act on the matter of the 2009 fare and toll increases necessitated by the statutory requirement that the MTA operate on a self-sustaining basis. Complete descriptions of the fare and toll increases are found in the fare and toll increase book provided to each of the committee members. Those materials include the staff summaries describing the proposed actions. The committee's approval is sought for the following actions as more completely described in the fare and toll increase book. 1. I request the committee's adoption of the resolution on page 3 of the fare and toll increase book. Adoption of this resolution will allow the MTA to make the tariff changes described in Attachment A to the resolution. 2. I request the committee's adoption of the resolution on page 61 of the fare and toll increase book. Adoption of this resolution will adopt the findings contained in the negative declaration attached to the resolution and authorize the President of the TBTA to execute, file, and publish the negative declaration as required by law. 3. I request the committee's adoption of the resolution on page 115 of the fare and toll increase book. Adoption of this resolution will allow the TBTA to take all necessary actions to implement the crossing change schedule attached to the resolution. So before we go back on vote, I would like to open the floor to discussion by all our committee members. Andrew.
Recognizing the incredible amount of pain this is going to cause all of our customers and the economic health of the region, I'm going to make a proposal which I hope somebody will think is worthwhile, and we'll discuss it. One of the pieces of the transit increase is a proposed bonus of 15% on the pay-per-ride Metro cards. When the bonus was cut from 20% to 15%, we heard a lot of griping about odd amounts left on cards and inconvenience with transferring money from one card to another. I would like to propose, if it's doable, that the bonus be lowered to 10%, and that with some of the savings realized from that, we try to buy back some of the worst of the service cut proposals found in the humongous service cut book, which many of you have with you today, and I didn't bring because the date on it was March 25th, and we weren't discussing that today. But this would be at least a sign that we're trying to do something to minimize the pain herein, and some of the cuts are just unconscionable, and I would propose that we look at a lower bonus in order to gain back some of those of the worst of the cuts, if it's fiscally doable.
Would you like to comment on that, or Gary?
Well, this item has been discussed in some of the briefings with board members. I guess there's two aspects to the point that Commissioner Albert has made. One is the general sense that the value of the discount, whether it's because of the loose change that's left on the cards or for other reasons, that the value of the discount is somewhat lost on the customers. That is somewhat belied by the fact that roughly a third of the transactions are by people utilizing the bonus cards. So it has been an important part of the way that these are regular customers in the main, our regular customers use the system. And obviously it would be a quite disproportionate impact, and so therefore would deviate not insignificantly from the theory of option A, which is a proportionate increase by fare media, by customer. So that's the first aspect. Option 2, as you know, did change things so that the bonus users had the greatest increase, and the value or benefit of that was then shared principally with the unlimited ride users, on the theory that more bonus users would then migrate, for lack of a better term, to unlimited ride uses, so that you would continue the overall goal of the board to enhance mobility. It has not been priced as a way that Commissioner Albert suggested to leave the other elements the same, and therefore anticipate what would be the additional of the roughly one third of the transactions that are paid for with pay-per-ride, increase that by eliminating the bonus, which is not quite 5% when you do it this way. It's not an arithmetic exercise because of the fact that people move back and forth, and so I can't do the number off the top of my head.
Can you quantify what that
It is quantifiable. I can't do it off the top of my head. I can say this, though, that it will move the 23% number. By definition, since that's your goal, is to move the 23% number. So staff will, if a motion is made, seconded in advance that we review that for Wednesday, we will do it. I will say there is one aspect that we did describe was a level of concern that if we move off of the 23% yield, that there is a fear that it would be perceived both by the public, because it would be contrary to the top part of the fare notice, as a material change. So without going into it in any more detail than that, I would say that that's the level of apprehension that we have as well.
You see what I'm trying to accomplish, obviously.
I do understand it.
Yeah.
But
I think it's worth looking at. I think we should probably be looking at all potential options to reduce the sting of these service cuts. So I would be in favor of further work, not to put any more burden on staff to look into this. but just so we can make an informed decision on Wednesday about maybe trying to roll back some of these service cuts if we could.
Then we will. We'll look at it.
Doreen, while you're at the floor, is there anything else you'd like to add to the discussion?
No, that's it.
You know, we've been looking at this for some time, and I think, you know, while I recognize the need, as we have done over the last since July, frankly, and coming up with a mix of unfortunate service cuts and unfortunate fare hikes, and looking at fare policy of one option versus another option, that we have been presented with, I guess the right mix is the term I'm looking for, of two unfortunate choices. And I would be reluctant to this point to say we should do more fares, less service, or more service, less fares. We've looked at this as a board. We've actually voted on this as a board. We've been transparent as a board in how we've reached these decisions. And I think we have before us a document that is unfortunate, but represents the right mix of service and fares. And at this point to say, maybe we should change this to do that, or do this to do this. If you make one change, something else is going to happen that's going to be unfair to someone or something else. And I feel very comfortable with this unfortunate mix, with this unfortunate plan that has the right mix, and in my opinion is I don't want to use the word fair, but at least fair across the board, as unfair as it may be. I'm not sure if my point got there, but I think it did.
I'm actually somewhat dumbfounded that this process, which began in open, in everybody's view, over a year ago, and has played out monthly with Gary and his finance team giving us all the reports as it were on a month-to-month basis, tracking the revenues, tracking it, and the information being disseminated to the public, and the public hearings that have taken place by Ravitch, that there could be any possible discussion in Albany as to whether or not there's a real problem, and how to go about fixing it. As an observer of politics and government for 30 years, I know that anything can happen in Albany, but this one is a real beaut of a public policy debate, and New Yorkers are all the worse for it. There's no question in my mind, and I suspect not in anybody else's mind around this table, and certainly not in the minds of the Daily News, the New York Times, the New York Post, the transit rider groups, the good government groups. I think a speaker spoke before about the broad coalition of people looking at this in support. That this is a crisis born out of the economy. As we referenced the real estate transfer tax issue, as we watched that number decline into the abyss, we adopted a budget where we were expecting this year to be $700 million worse, I think, than last year, and that number is already off by another $100 million since that adoption took place. That number is essentially the reason for, with a couple other taxes that have gone into the toilet, for the fiscal mess that we're in. So what we have is essentially a system financed by the legislature in good faith. These are good people who have done this, by a bad check that they wrote us several years ago. And what we have been trying to get as a board collectively is for them to make good on that check and change the way they finance this and give us another source of revenue that allows us to maintain the service and hold the fares to a reasonable rate so that everybody shares the pain. There are 45 hours approximately left before this disaster goes into effect. And I hope that something will sink in with both the Democrats and the Republicans, because this, as my colleague to my left last week said, is not The problem is it's become somewhat partisan, and this transportation system should not be dictated by partisan politics. Both sides are responsible, the Democrats and the Republicans. The riders are the ones who are going to get squeezed and shortchanged as a result of this, and that I would hope that before we act on this on Wednesday, and I will vote for option 1 on Wednesday, if the legislature doesn't act, I will do my statutory duty, but I hope that they seriously take their statutory duty into effect and rescue the riders.
A couple of thoughts personally. Number one, I agree with what the chairman said totally. Having served on this board since, I think, 1994, this is a real crisis, and don't let anybody think that there's a separate set of books here, all this other nonsense, because that's not the case. The MTA is really in a very, very deep hole, and unfortunately, I think the hole is getting a lot deeper, as Gary DeLarison told you this morning. There's no question the real estate taxes and other dedicated taxes are collapsing, and you can also see that our ridership is now starting to be affected by all the layoffs that everybody's been reading about in the papers, and that, of course, is going to take its toll on the bridge and the subway and so forth, commuter rail revenue. For myself, I think that this is a real wake-up call for us and how the MTA does business. And as you all know, I felt very strongly about this for many, many years. I think that this crisis now is going to bring the MTA and how it operates to the forefront. Look, this is a group, an organization of a lot of hard-working people that run a system very, very safely, thank God, over all these years, with not a lot of resources considering what it's asked to deliver. But there are structural changes that need to be made here. I think that this budget that unfortunately we're going to have to vote on really throws this whole burden, a lot of it, the vast majority of poor people that can't afford it, that ride the system every day, either the commuter railroads or the subways or the buses, and we need to do more here, and I hope that the chairman's committee, as Gary alluded to, and I believe it will, over the next month comes up with some real innovative savings that are not going to pull out all the chestnuts, but are going to do whatever we can to be sure that this system is run in the most efficient way that it possibly can be run. I also think labor is going to have to take a look at this thing too, because they're part of the solution, and the way we're going here, there's obviously going to be layoffs and everything else, and I think labor has to do their fair share now in coming together with us in order to make sure that the rider doesn't become the people that really absorb the full shock of this thing. So it's really it's a sad day for the MTA, and it's certainly a sad day for me, having served here as audit chairman, finance chairman, and Westchester County Commissioner for all these years, to see us come to this. But it's a real thing, and we are really at this point now, and I'm going to make sure that we do everything we can to run this as efficiently as we possibly can in the future. And I think I see Norman now would like to make a comment, if there's anybody else, and then we'll call for a formal vote on the resolutions.
Mr. Chairman, you know my position on the fare increases, tolls increases. However, I just want to throw something out there, and I know I've talked about tobacco taxes, I've talked about alcohol taxes, I've talked about so many different ways of trying to raise revenue to lessen the burden, if you will, on the public. Now I'm throwing out there an additional 10% hotel occupancy taxes for those who come to New York and use our services, our police services, our fire services, our EMS services, our transit system. And as a bonus with that, I think that we could give them a 2-day pass to ride the subway or the bus while they're here visiting, and it wouldn't have that much of an impact on us, but we'd be receiving a very nice cushion from the visitors that come. If I'm not mistaken, The Staten Island ferry is free, but the individuals that get on the ferry, a lot of them are visitors just going back and forth to take pictures of the Statue of Liberty and everything else, and the impact that we're losing money on areas like that, I think, has some significance in what we're doing. The people of the city and the state of New York and the surrounding counties make it very, very comfortable for visitors to come here and enjoy themselves. They too should feel a little bit of an obligation to the people of this city and this state. So although I am totally against any type of increases at this point, Albany, I believe, from the years that I've dealt with them, at the end of the day will come to a resolution on both sides of the aisle. The governor will step up to the plate and do what's necessary to be done, and that's more or less my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, with regard to Vice Chairman Saul's reference to labor participating in the pain of all this, I do think that's an element that's been conspicuous by its absence in the debate. There are thousands of people who will not have jobs they would have otherwise had as a function of this, and I suggest that for those particular individuals, however small the impact may be on the total economy of this huge, wonderful city, that for those particular individuals, these are people that are paying the deepest price of all. And whatever may be worked out in collective bargaining aside, the layoffs and like I said, the jobs that people otherwise would have had, the promotions that some people would have had that are not going to get, these are much greater pain than having to take a subway instead of a bus. While all the other stuff is very painful, the fare increases are substantial. The not having a job is way, way, way more substantial for that particular individual, and I just want that noted. Labor is paying a price in this.
I think we all realize how difficult this decision is for ourselves, and I think that Alan hit the nail on the head when he said that what it points out is that we need a different funding structure than we have. It has to be a funding structure that's equitable for all, that's equitable in terms of the service that each of the counties receives, that's equitable for the state as a whole, because the state as a whole receives benefits from us as well. There is no upside of raising the fares to the extent that we're raising them. But there is also nothing forthcoming on the plate right now, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to have a balanced budget. I think you all know that the northern Hudson counties weren't happy with any aspect of what was in front of us, be it the Ravitch plan or the fare increases. And I'm hoping that what happens is that Albany hears what we're saying and understands that it's time to take a look at our underlying funding structure from two perspectives. One is equitable service, and the other is equitable benefit, because this MTA provides a huge benefit for all of us. It should be some kind of structure that's not as susceptible to the downturn as what we've seen in our existing real estate funding. So I'm sorry that we have to make this decision, but I don't see that we have any option at the moment. I hope that Albany's listening to the pain that it's going to cause to the people, not only here in the city, but also in the suburbs. I want you to note that because of the difficulties of structuring the fare system on west of Hudson intermediate fares go up 71% in some situations. It makes me speechless to think of, but that's what we're looking at as well. It isn't nice for anyone. Thank you, sir.
I just want to go real quickly and add a point that I don't want to belabor this. However, I just want to caution that over the next 2 days or so before we act, or even after that, that we don't come up with a short-term solution. And we've echoed this, but I just want to make it clear that if there's a short-term solution that deals only with this budget in front of us today, that will not do us any good, because we will be back. And we need to not only put, we talk about operating and capital as being two separate things, but in reality they're linked in the form of debt service. And we've seen this over and over again in this board, and you can't solve one without the other. And that's really what also is at issue here. We can't accept as a board a one-year solution, because it won't be a one-year solution, because we'll be back here in a month or 2 months or 3 months guaranteed. And I just want to remind everyone that we're moving a resolution to deal with this year, but it also deals with the years after that, and that's an issue.
Yeah, I think I've got to go back a little bit and address Commissioner Albert and Frasco a little bit. This book of service cuts has been put together with an awful lot of work from staff and some of us on the board, or all of us on the board. And there are things here that we all would like to change, that we don't like. We've got personal things, we've got experiences that says things in this book are just not right. I know when we went around to the hearings, there were certain groups that were very well organized that put forward their particular reason why one bus service or something else shouldn't be cut. We saw signs put up by Gene and his group at different meetings saying, don't do this, don't do that. This represents as good a job as human beings can make, as human beings can do, to divide the pain as equally as we can. There isn't anybody on this board that wants to do this. The 23% fare increase is easy for everybody to understand. This book is very hard to understand. It won't start going into effect until May. It won't really get finished till the end of the year. The blowback on this, I believe, is going to be much, much, much bigger than the fare increase. People will not be able to go where they want to go, when they want to go there. And that's just terrible. We are the economic engine of the region, and these fare increases and these service cuts are just horrific. And I don't think people understand, unless they've read through this book, how bad they really are. This is just terrible. So I know the board would like to change this and that, but I think that on whole, we've done as good a job, Gary and everybody else has done a good a job, as spreading this out as best as human beings can. And I urge you all to adopt it, as unpleasant as it is. And we'll be back Wednesday doing the final vote. So I'm sorry, but this is a terrible thing that we all have to do.
Okay, is there anybody else? If not, let's proceed then. Okay, the first motion is the following. I request the committee's adoption of the resolution on page 3 of the fare and toll increase book. Adoption of this resolution will allow the MTA to make the tariff changes described in attachment 8 of the resolution. And now may I have a motion to adopt the resolution? And a second, please? And a vote, please?
Aye.
Okay. Number 2, I request the committee's adoption of the resolution on page 61 of the fare and toll increase book. Adoption of this resolution will adopt the findings contained in the negative declaration attached to the resolution and authorize the president of the TBTA to execute, file, and publish the negative declaration as required by law. May I please have a motion? And a second, please? And a vote, please?
Aye.
Number 3, I request the committee's adoption of the resolution on page 115 of the fare and toll increase book. The adoption of the resolution will allow the TBTA to take all necessary actions to implement the crossing change schedule attached in the resolution. May I please have a motion? And a vote, please?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Gary, will you take us forward now, please, with the procurement report?
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, we'll finish the action items and then go back to the information items. The next action item is the property disposition guidelines that's contained on page 61 of your book.
Okay, may we please have a motion? And a second, please? And a vote, please?
And the third and final action item is on page 181 of your book, and that is the 2008 Annual Procurement Report. These materials were distributed on a CD to the committee members because it's a very voluminous report.
A motion, please. And a second, please. And a vote, please.
Aye.
Okay, now, Gary, procurement report.
There are now two information items, Mr. Chairman, that we can go back to. The first is the annual prompt payment report on page 15 of your book.
Andrew, I think we need to go back to those votes for a second.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that I'm voting against all three of those proposals,
Okay.
so that it's in the record, please.
Yeah, is the secretary, please make note of that? Is that done, please? The secretary, thank you. It's
Thank
done,
you.
Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Gary, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, again, on page 15 of your book is the MTA Prompt Payment Annual Report. This is an information item only and is required by legislation.
So you don't need a vote, correct?
No, sir.
Okay.
And if there are no questions, on page 25 of your book is the Strategic Information Technology Plan and the 2008 accomplishments.
Okay. No vote necessary again, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Andrew.
Jim, I'm sorry.
Could we have some comment on the prompt payment report? It is, in the terms of the dollars we're talking about in this agency, not a lot of money, but there is certainly some wide disparity between some agencies like Metro North, which has got zero, and others that are running fairly high numbers, relatively speaking, on these. I just asked the question whether this report does serve to energize people within the agencies.
Just to put it in a perspective, this is against an $8 billion total procurement. We've paid a total of $69,000 in late payments, which is a de minimis percentage. But having said that, our controller, Michael Jazzcar, is sitting across from you, and he can go through some of the overall stats on it.
I mean, the real important number to look at is, again, total value of the invoices is about $7.9 billion of a total of 311,000 invoices that have been paid agency-wide. Of that 311,000, 1,611 of them are for discretion for prompt payment. Of that number, it's $69,000. Comparing that $69,000 to 2007, it's about a $16,000 decrease of 27%. Most of these particular items are in because of delays and or prompt payment regulations requiring an official invoice. Other than that, I can give you details if you need that for all the agencies.
As I said, I'm not interested in details, more that the fact that there does seem to be some not insignificant drops in some of the agencies to meet this standard.
I mean, that has to do with the types of systems in place. For example, MTA headquarters had a high in probably 2004 when PeopleSoft was particularly implemented. It has gone down steadily since then.
Thank you. Yeah.
We would now move to the procurements. Beginning on page 183, we have the MTA all-agency procurements. There are two procurements for MTA headquarters for a grand total of $28,546,000. One is non-competitive for that total value, and one is competitive at a zero cost, just adding 4 vendors to our list.
I think it's 28,000.
$28,546.
Yeah, you said
I'm sorry,
million.
you're
It's
correct.
28, right.
We usually deal in millions.
Yeah. But we're saving money now, you see?
There you go.
All right. Okay, may we please have a motion? And a second, please? And a vote, please? Okay, next. Gary, go ahead.
All right, moving to Metro North, I'd like to move your attention to page 195. Metro North has pulled that item from the agenda. That will probably come before the committee in April. It's the Laner Construction Corporation contract that will not be voted upon, which leaves 3 items totaling $5,672,400.
And a second, please. And a vote, please. Go ahead, Gary.
Long Island Railroad, beginning on page 197 of your book, has two procurements totaling $7,457,500.
Okay, motion, please.
Motion made.
Second, please. And a vote, please. Go ahead, Gary.
There are no items for Long Island Bus. Bridges and Tunnels, beginning on page 201, has one procurement for a total of $1 million, and that is with the City of New York for traffic enforcement agents coverage on capital projects.
A motion, please. A second. And a vote, please. Next, Gary.
For New York City Transit, there are four procurements totaling $22,979,912.
Okay, a motion, please. Second, please. And a vote, please.
MTA Bus, there are no items. Capital Construction, there is one contract for the 2nd Avenue subway totaling $325 million.
And a second, please. And a vote, please. So moved.
And there are no items for the First Mutual Transportation Insurance Company and no executive session.
Thank you very much. And a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting.
CCOP committee will be 10 minutes from now. Everybody take a break, and we'll do it in 10 minutes.
I had a very good meeting with Lenny Simone. He comes, to our briefing, and